Honorable members, just a few announcements. We understand that the Honorable member, Ms. Kathy Hughes' laptop was discovered in the vacant seat next to her. I've already heard all kinds of conspiracies, but I will tell you from the moment the announcement was made to the time we left this dome, the dome was under surveillance. And I'm happy that the laptop was discovered. I can attest to the fading of my nimbleness of memory as I age. But we're happy that the laptop was found, and all may not be well, but we are very pleased that aspersions could not be cast on persons within this room. My apologies for being late. The chief whip, the clerk, and I met to deal with some issues that arose Monday and today. And hopefully, with the discussions we had, the remaining days of the debate and the estimates could be in a more orderly, decent, and exemplary manner. With this, I call on the Honorable Member, Mr. Devin Sears, to make his contribution.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for affording me the opportunity to address this honorable House. To the members on the other side, happy post-Republic. And to the winning side, APNU plus AFC family that I represent, who also represents all Guyanese, despite of race, color, or creed, and who will be back in government soon, I say a warm hello to you. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I did not extend my prayer today for mercy, peace, and favor for Guyana, and for us to overcome the myriad of challenges so our people can thrive and enjoy the abundance of God's grace. To every single person here in Guyana infected with COVID 19, I pray that you will have a full recovery as quickly as possible. Our hearts goes out to the families and even the communities affected as well. I want to reach out to all the persons who are confined in quarantine or in isolation. We know this is not an easy time for you as you live each day with the weight of worry and uncertainty. To our frontline workers, I salute you. However, Mr. Speaker, our dear land of Guyana is experiencing another great threat, a disease. I'm talking about an infection that stymies progress, breeds corruption, empowers the wealthy, and feeds scraps to the less fortunate. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about those warming our seat in government. Mr. Speaker, as a Guyanese with proven citizenship, I feel dismayed, hurt, and appalled, but not surprised with the budget presented by the honorable member. This budget will go down in history as one of the worst ever presented. This budget is perverse, malicious, and precarious. If you recognize that this is the true representation of the PPP, Mr. Speaker, I represent the Upper Damara Berbice region. In this budget, $4.78 billion is allocated, an increase from $3.9 billion in the so-called 2020 emergency budget. It sounds good, right? An increase is good. Well, the harsh reality is that 48% is allocated to employment cost, 36.9% goes to other charges, and 14.3% goes to capital expenditure. If one is to pay keen attention, this is not a new formula that is being used by the PPP. It's the same formula that it used while it was in government for 23 years that has oppressed the beautiful region that I call Upper Demerara Berbice. I speak on behalf of my constituency when I say we have had enough. And it notes that it was on the path to a promised land under President David Granger at that time. However, Mr. Speaker, there is light at the end of the tunnel. The APNU plus AFC appreciates the PPP's efforts to continue our proven legacy of some key projects within that region. One of it is the completion of the call center, which is expected to employ about 300 young people, and if on a 24-hour basis, will employ about 900. We thank you for continuing this project. Also, we want to say thank you for continuing the project of the Linden to Mabura Road. Also, we want to say thank you for continuing the construction of the Christian Board Primary School. We also want to say thank you for continuing our legacy project for the Linden synthetic track. But Mr. Speaker, my people are disappointed with the fact that in the 2021 budget, the Kokwani to Linden Road is not catered for when it comes to maintenance. We ask that this be corrected. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to agriculture, there's urgent need for full policy implementation that will transform this sector, not only for food security, but one that is sustainable and commercially viable. I am proud to say, Mr. Speaker, that just a week ago, the capable and competent councillors started its first monthly farmers market day, which was a success. And I say kudos to them. Under the theme, grow local, consume local, and buy local. There is much more to be done. While the government continues our legacy project, the Millie's Hideout Road, we say thank you for continuing it. But the farmers want to know by how many kilometers will this project continue. It was the vision of the APNU AFC to bridge the gap from Berbice River to Linden to ease the transport of goods. Also, we want to know, the West Watuka Road is currently in a terrible state, but are we going to put back a single lane road? If we're serious about farming, we need to ensure that at least 2 tractors can pass in the road. And we ask that this be corrected. Mr. Speaker, the Takama Savannah, over the last decade, we have recognized that there's increased farming activities, especially when it comes to citrus farming. But that road is in a terrible, terrible state. And the Honorable Member, Mark Phillips, can attest that the Takama Bata School soldiers who traverse there, they have expressed their dear frustration. Mr. Speaker, as a former lecturer, I believe I've grown to understand over the period the importance of education and the true concept of no child left behind. It is not to rush students through the system, it's to ensure that key stakeholders, being the educators and learners, have the necessary resources to deliver and receive. Mr. Speaker, I fear after this global pandemic has left us, the underprivileged in my constituency, 16 indigenous communities, Kokwani and Aichuni, will be left behind because this government's ineptitude to maintain the ICT hubs, establish stable internet access, and distribute computers to those who need it the most. The government claims that it cares about young people so much that they have terminated the former Ministry of Public Security re-education program, which aimed at re-educating potential juveniles, juvenile delinquents, teenage mothers, and school dropouts. They need a second opportunity as well. Most recently, we have observed that they went after the contractor of the who's looking at the LTI dormitory, which should have housed over 200 young people from far-flung communities. We say to you, and we understand that the PPP do not care about the young people. Mr. Speaker, the residents of Upward Demerara Berbice, and most recently, the speaker before me, Honorable Dr. Prasad, spoke about the Board of Governors. Now, Region 10 is predominantly of Afro descent. And what we recognize is that with the recent appointment of directors to this board, it's predominantly Indian. That's the Board of Guardians. I say to you, what we have recognized, it seems as if the PPP is politicizing this board and it comes over as being racist. And this is unacceptable. We ask that it be corrected. During the APNU plus AFC government, we had ensured that all interest groups, even representatives from the religious community, have been a part of this board so it can better serve those who needed the assistance most. When it comes to natural resources, in April of this year, Linden will complete 105 years of bauxite mining. This very resource has contributed handsomely to this country's gross domestic product. It has survived 14 global recessions, which brought severe economic and financial disruption in many countries, such as Guyana. And to date, Mr. Speaker, it still maintains the highest employment rate, second to the public sector. And I must inform this honorable House that Region 10 per capita pay the most taxes. Mr. Speaker, the bauxite industry needs attention. There must be a level playing field for investors. Currently, we have a bauxite company who's producing value-added products, while we have another company who's just extracting the ore and sending it to a different country for processing. We have a company who is thinking about expanding and employing more Guyanese, while most recently, we had a bauxite company that fired hundreds of our workers. Those communities affected, Hururu, Araima, and specifically Kokwani. Let me say this, Mr. Speaker, that very company I'm speaking about is Russo, who extracted their equipment. I am saying to this honorable House and to the other side, if it is that Russo has no interest in bauxite mining in this country, well, let them go. But I encourage you on the other side to ensure that we get an investor that comes and take over that operation. We cannot afford to play luck and chance with people's livelihoods. This is unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, I make reference to an editorial in Starbuck newspaper dated February 24th by renowned economist Lincoln Lewis, which posited, he said that sugar in Guyana is being produced at 0.41%, and it's being sold on the world market for 0.13%. And this represents a loss of 0.28 cents, right? Forgive me. And it continues to say, the disparity in attention and the treatment of bauxite and sugar based on economics cannot withstand scrutiny. Mr. Speaker, it is time that the government act and represent the people of sub-region 2. When it comes to local government, my capital town, Linden, since when I served as a municipal councillor, I've always had financial difficulties, a problem which existed during the PPP's installed interim management committee back in the 90s. Linden is indebted over $100 million owed to NIS, GRA, and other agencies. This debt affects entitled salary increases, employment benefits, and the lack of proper service to over 30,000 residents. The Honorable Darren Lal, I ask of you to consider this and make representation to your side. We need the new boundaries in Linden to be regularized, and I'm talking from Bamio to Rockstone Junction and Comaka. We also would like the revaluation of properties so people can pay proper rates and taxes. We also would like the return of the toll booth at the Wismar-Mackenzie Bridge to the municipality. And also, this $18 million subvention is not good enough. We propose $50 million because we have a growing town. Let me also say to you, Honorable Member Dharamlal, that my capital town, Linden, is asking for a complete bailout if you truly care about the folks in Region 10. Upper Demerara Barbies asks that many squatting areas be regularized, similarly to what we had done to Andysville and Prosville. We ask that those areas be regularized. And listen, we welcome the distribution of 1,000 houses, but my people of Upper Demerara Barbies have one concern. Who will be the beneficiaries of these 1,000 houses? We have a backlog of people for decades who have applied and have not gotten a chance for a house lot as yet. We ask this question, who will be the true beneficiaries? And they also want to know, will the necessary infrastructure be put in place, such as proper roads and water? Mr. Speaker, when it comes to electricity, this installed regime continues to boast about 0% taxes on electricity, continues to boast about 0% taxes on electricity. This here is misleading. It is misleading. Now listen, I'm looking at a specimen of an electricity bill in Linden, and it says this person pays $700 tax, VAT, on the reconnection fee. Let it be known in this house today, how can a small man who can barely afford to pay his electricity bill afford to pay a reconnection tax? And this here needs to be registered. We are being fooled as Guyanese. When it comes to infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, the intention of the APNU plus AFC government was to construct a new Wismar-Mackenzie Bridge. The feasibility study has already been done. My people are disappointed in the fact that this Wismar-Mackenzie Bridge has not been considered in the 2021 budget. We continue to face a backlog of traffic. If you're making Linden a capital town, and it's the gateway to the interior and the coast, we need a new bridge. And you say that you care about the people. You don't care about the people. I also want to bring to your attention, Mr. Speaker, that the Linden-Suzdijk Highway is in a terrible state. Most recently, we have had an accident, and we continue to get accidents. We have completed the feasibility study, and we ask the members on the other side to continue that project. In the 2021 budget, we recognize that there is patch work. We don't want patch work. We need a proper highway. How many more deaths do we need on the Linden-Suzdijk Highway before we actually catch our senses? I ask you, the other side.
Honorable member, before you can continue along the highway, you need some time.
Thank you. Current Speaker, I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member Mr. Jones. Honorable Member Mr. Sears, you may continue to conclude.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the PPP had promised 50,000 jobs, and this is a farce, right? That's another pink slip. Many projects under this regime throughout our region is being outsourced. We have competent contractors. Why is it that a contractor from along the coast and as far as Borbees have to go to Linden and complete a job when we have resources and we have people that can complete it? This creates a gap in our economy, right? And who's suffering? The small man is suffering. The small man is suffering. When it comes to health, I must say to you, Mr. Speaker, that we're in dire need of a dialysis machine. It's not functioning. And we ask that the honorable member responsible for health look into this urgently. But I want to draw your attention to a much more serious issue, one that has to do with the sacking or not re-signing the contract of the St. John's Ambulance Brigade workers. Those women have no means of income. They have children to feed. They have many eyes looking at them in the morning and saying, "Mommy, what are we going to eat?" While the members on the other side enjoying the best life as possible, big vehicle and staying at hotels and all these things, the good life must trickle down to the small man. You say that you care about young people, and you have fired some NDMA data entry clerks in our region. What are they supposed to do now? It's a good thing that in Region 10 we live as one. We look out for each other. We help each other. And that is how we're getting by. We are a faith-based community. Mr. Speaker, I can safely say this because I don't believe the members on the other side getting through or understanding what I'm saying. I got to use country terms. Juja, Juju, Chacha, and Gauji Wangwakto. We, the people of Region 10, need jobs. And while you play politics, we have mothers crying and not knowing where they're going to get the next meal from to feed their children. This is unacceptable. When it comes to financing, the Linden Enterprise Network, during the APNU plus AFC, we had given it $100 million. And this year was to help the small man get on his feet, start his small businesses so he can be independent. But let me tell you, in this budget, there is $0 going towards the Linden Economic Network. What will happen to this small man? This is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. I say to you, there's no new investment coming to Linden. Yes, the other side will boast about a $2 million US factory that's coming, concrete factory. But this is abstract. Just like the plan with the rehabilitation of the Mackenzie Sports Club ground. You need to consult the people. That is the only way we can have collective ideas and work together as one. Mr. Speaker, we in Upper Demerara Barbies, we want new businesses, skyscrapers, 4-lane highways, super speed internet, modern sports facilities, safe spaces, universities. We want to drink milk and honey. We want to eat prime steak, prawns. We want to have champagne dreams and caviar wishes. We want the promised land, and we want it now. The same attention that is being given to West Dem and Barbies, we want the same attention. Mr. Speaker, as I close, and as I prepare to yield, I posit the quote from Linden's very own poet, Leon Labastide, and from his Amazon best-selling book, We Are One. And I hope our president pays attention to this. The fog will fade eventually, and we will appear. We are no longer strangers anymore, nor black nor white, nor Afro-Guyanese or Indo-Guyanese. We are simply human beings. We are living in paradise, falling in love with the waterfalls, bauxite in our blood, gold in our head. What a compass. The evidence I carry, one people, one nation, one destiny. The fog will fade eventually, and the APNU plus AFC will be back in government to deliver a good life to all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, I humbly submit that the 2021 budget does not care for the small man, and I cannot support it at this time.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member Mr. Sears. I now call on the Honorable Member Mr. Siraj to make his contribution.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me wish all my colleagues a very good evening. And I'm reminded that we're in February, I think, and I think my honorable colleague thinks it's Christmas time. I have a long wish list, and right, and if I was Santa Claus, I would have attempted to hand some of those things over. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, on a serious note, concerns of health, education, food, agriculture, food security, building of infrastructure like bridges and highways, all those things are of major concern to this government. And that is why in this budget here, sir, you're seeing strategic allocations to these major sectors that are aimed to do exactly what the honorable member is looking for, to give the good life to all, without exception. And in time to come, sir, I'm certain we'll have a modern highway to Linden, we'll have a new bridge, we'll have food security. Already they have major investment in shade houses, the cauliflower, the celery, and other crops are doing well. I saw some pictures only this morning of the input that NARI is making in Region 10 and the result that they are getting. Mr. Speaker, as I reminisce about past budget debate, I recall a number of our colleagues, including myself, talking about, the efforts that would have gone into the preparation of the budget itself. And I myself would have done the same in previous budget presentation. This time, sir, with your permission, I want to quote from what Dr. Ashley Singh said, to erase any doubt whatsoever that he would have made a contribution in acknowledging the effort that staff of his ministry would have made into budget preparation. Because some people are of the view, sir, that if it is not in here, then it was not said. And what is written in here, sir, is a major part of what Dr. Ashley Singh would have said. And I want to quote the part that is of importance to me, sir, and would avoid making, and to endorse it, and avoid me making reference to the stalwart efforts of the staff of the ministry. And this is what he said, Mr. Speaker, in the extract. Mr. Speaker, before I close, permit me only to acknowledge the tremendous efforts made by all of my colleagues in the cabinet and their respective staff who exerted tremendous efforts in preparing their respective budgets, submissions, and yes, I think a round of applause is eminently deserving. Permit me also to acknowledge the contributions and submissions made by so many stakeholders throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, some of whom submitted written submissions and some of whom participated in face-to-face or virtual engagements, sharing ideas, making suggestions, and discussing issues. Finally, I trust that I would be forgiving for saving the last word for my own team at the Ministry of Finance, who over the past few weeks made it eminently evident to me why on my return to the ministry, I really did feel like I was returning home. I thank them for the energy that they exerted in preparing this budget. It was not easy, as you can imagine. They invested tremendous long hours, and I trust that all the members of this House would agree that they did a phenomenal job. With those not so few words, the privilege is mine on this People's Progressive Party civic government's behalf to propose this budget 2021 for consideration and approval by this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I totally endorse what Dr. Ashley Singh said. But I said I will quote this because some people had heard, or the ears heard, because I've heard it more than once that Dr. Singh did not acknowledge what did not acknowledge the effort that went into preparation of this budget by members of his staff. Sir, in making a presentation, there are sometimes written notes, and then in a debate, there are things that you add as you go along. Many members in this House say, if you, Mr. Speaker, if you take a look at what we prepare, and then you go to the record, you will see addition to what was said. What is of critical importance is what is said here. And Mr. Speaker, what Dr. Singh said here came from the heart, sir. It's how he was feeling. What is in this budget, sir, is where the calculated mind, the analytical mind, where they would be studying projections, they'll be studying trends, studying numbers, looking at our manifesto, what developmental path we'll want to take, and put it into this document. This extract demonstrates clearly how Dr. Singh felt about members of his staff giving him the support. And so I think that it was of value that we recognize and we emphasize that Dr. Singh did not in any way forgot the efforts that went into the preparation of this budget by his staff. Mr. Speaker, on the 9th of February, His Excellency, the President, sir, gave the keynote address to a consultation that was hosted by the Global Water Partnership Caribbean and the high-level experts and leaders panel on water and disaster and Global Water Partnership. This consultation was on water and health. And in delivering that keynote address, the president said clearly that in order for us to address issues of water and health and disaster, we must build a solid foundation. We must build a solid foundation. And then, sir, on the 11th of February, right here in this dome, where nothing was lost, His Excellency went on to talk about the oneness of our Guyanese people and his vision for our development. And I think, sir, what he spoke about is aptly captured in the budget presentation made by Dr. Singh. Because here you have the laying of foundation with the vision of oneness and the good life for all, outlined in all its pages. I think there's 77 of them, if I'm correct. 77 of these pages. So, Mr. Speaker, as we debate this budget, all of us will acknowledge that the just over $383 billion that we're going to spend here in 2021 will go a long way towards fixing that foundation that the president spoke about. And no amount of distractions will take us away from that. Whether it's in Region 10, I see the comrade has left, the honorable member has left, and to say that electricity, sir, I was quite frankly surprised that the honorable member from Region 10 out of Linden would talk about electricity. They're getting it almost free there. And I think that we as a government should try to bring down the cost of electricity for all our citizens, make it comparable. Instead of raising the rates there, what we will do here, and the budget addresses it, with investment in renewable, in investment in the Wales Development Authority, bringing the gas line to shore, is to bring the cost of electricity down. A solid foundation on which our economy could take off. So we will fix that. The house lots that he's clamoring about, I'm certain colleagues here, Susan Rodriguez and the Honorable Colin Crowell, we in our manifesto spoke about 50,000 house lots. So we lag a little bit last year, but under understandable circumstances, we're going to pick up steam and we're going to get rolling, and by the end of the 5 terms, sir, I'm certain we will deliver on that manifesto promise of 50,000 house lots. Sir, again, I mean, what can be more solid than concrete? The honorable gentleman who spoke before me spoke about the establishment of a concrete factory in Region 10, and then went on to say it's abstract. So I simply cannot understand the logics of making that commitment and then say that it is abstract. Mr. Speaker, in the days preceding, we would have listened to some contribution, and I recall this morning Mr. Ramjatan spoke passionately about this issue of loans and repayments and taxes and all of that. And so we need to be reminded that loans were very much a part of our life. Indeed, the loans that were taken by the PNC between that period 64 to 92 was like a stone around our necks. And by 92, debt repayment represents 152% of revenues. That is what it was. And I mentioned that, sir, to fast forward to 2015, when with that big loan around our neck, we, the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration, was able to reduce that to just 5% of revenues. Because debt in itself is not evil, it's not bad. It's how you manage it. And Mr. Ramjatan, sir, seasoned politician as he was, seems to think that taking debt or raising debt ceiling is a bad thing. Yet on the other hand, they're clamoring for credit to our Guyanese people. If debt is a bad thing, why is it that you're clamoring so much for access to loans and so to to our people. The government itself should also have access to loans. And that is why, sir, in order for us to grow as a country, what we have done is to establish credit worthiness. Not everybody could borrow, Mr. Speaker. You can only borrow if you're qualified to borrow, if you're credit worthy, if you can pay back. And simply based on our records, sir, people are falling over themselves to lend money to us. And that is why this administration can borrow. And that is why, sir, we had absolutely no difficulty in raising the debt ceiling for both external and domestic loans. Because we are confident, sir, that we can pay. Mr. Ramjatan spoke about not borrowing. Sir, they did not borrow. What they did, the honorable member Ramjatan, sir, he said that they did not borrow. What they did, sir, is that they bullied. They bullied the Bank of Guyana to cash checks rather than do the decent thing and borrow. And that is why we, as a responsible government, we had to go and raise the debt ceiling at two levels, sir, at the local level and at the external level. We had to raise the ceiling to regularize the wickedness that was done by the APNU AFC. The taxes that he spoke about, Mr. Speaker, that, when we said that we managing a huge budget with no new taxes, and Ramjatan spoke about taxes. What we have to talk about, sir, is that between the period 2015 to 2019, the APNU government, sir, raking an additional $83 billion more. $83 billion more in taxes in that period from what it was. And that, sir, takes you exactly to what they were talking about, Mr. Ramjatan, the honorable member. Mr. Speaker, I recall a saying by author and poet Robert Louis Stevenson. I recall reading this novel in school, Treasure Island. He's the author of that. And Robert Louis Stevenson said, Mr. Speaker, that don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. So the APNU from 2015 to when they were forced to vacate were only concerned about harvesting. They were only concerned about harvesting. They were not planting anything. They were not planning for anything. And that is why I have serious difficulties with the colleagues over on that side talking about the just over 40% growth in our economy in 2020, which Dr. Singh acknowledged. But they failed to go on to say, that the non-oil economy retracted by 7.3%. And that is what is crucial, Mr. Speaker. Because if you want to avoid the resource course, if you want to avoid the Dutch disease, this is exactly what you have to avoid. You cannot...
Honorable member, if you want to avoid cutting off at this time, you have to get an extension.
Pardon me, sir?
Mr. Speaker, with your permission,
Oh, Lord.
5 minutes.
Thank you very much,
Requested.
Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable member, you may proceed with 5 minutes additional time to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, is that the Apple timekeeper you have there?
No, it's a Nadir timekeeper.
Sir, I'll have to ask, Mr. Figueroa, honorable member, is not here because, Mr. Speaker, when you start out on these things, you get caught up with time, and like the honorable member can't even finish that pig pen up to now. So, but Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to address another issue. Mr. Ramjatan on this on agriculture. Honorable Mr. Ramjatan, on the issue of agriculture, sir, he glorified what the PNC, AP, and UAFC did with rice. Well, let me tell you the true story, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Mr. Ramjatan talked about this growth. And so when I look at the production, in 2010, production was 556,193 tons. In the 5-year period from 2010 to 2015, it moved to 1,058,129 tons. Almost double so. What happened under the PNC now from 2015 to 2020 is that from 1,058,129 tons in 2015 to 2020, production was 1,057,580 tons. Actually, it represents a decrease of 549 tons from the 2015 figure. Mr. Speaker, what Mr. Ramjatan, honorable member, was talking about was comparing one year to the other. What I'm comparing is what they came in and reached, and at the end of 5 years, instead of building on it, they actually produce less. And this is replicated, sir, in all other administrative areas, and especially in the productive sector. And it's really unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that the time seemed to have just run out like that, because I want to talk more about the development of the agriculture sector. What was done to Gaisuko, sir? Sugar. Sugar is the reason why most of us we're here today. Most of us are here today. Sir, and the Honorable Minister of Agriculture spoke about the sugar levy. When sugar was King Sugar, sugar was looking after the welfare of this country. And it is only reasonable that now that sugar is in some problem, that the country repay its debt to the sugar sector and to allow our people a breathing space. And by their own COI, as the minister said, sir, sugar does have a future. And Mr. Speaker, I would join with my colleague, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, and call on the Chief Whip, the Honorable Christopher Jones, to apologize and withdraw his remark as it relates to sugar. Mr. Speaker, I didn't see that sign. I got to put on my glasses. Sir, so in this, to settle that sugar issue, I'm certain with the plans that we are making that sugar will once again be viable. The livestock sector will kick off. New GMC, sir, with $353 million. We are investing in new equipment and cold storage. Drainage and irrigation that is so critical for overall development and to achieve that solid foundation that the president was talking about, $12 billion. We're going to fix the internal canals. We're going to fix the sea defense, the river defense, the sluices, increase pumping capacity, and, sir, importantly, the farm-to-market roads. The farm-to-market road, a network of them will be developed so that farmers can have easy access to their farmlands to go and plant and to harvest. And Mr. Speaker, in time to come, under this administration, starting now, Guyana is going to take off. I'm highly confident about that, and as a starting point, Budget 2021 is laying a solid foundation for this country to take off to greater and greater heights. And so, without any hesitation, I commend this budget to the National Assembly. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. We now call on the Honorable Member, Mr. Vince Roy Jordan, to make his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to say special thanks to the hard-working public servants who have been deprived for 2 consecutive years of a simple wage increase, and they would have been able to put in hard work to complete 2 consecutive budgets and with no reward. Mr. Speaker, I rise in relation to the budget presented by the Honorable Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance on February 12th, 2021, under the theme A Pathway to Recovery, Economic Dynamism, and Resilience. Mr. Speaker, a conclusive analysis of this budget convinces me to coin a much simpler theme to help the Honorable Minister describe his government's budget. That is a path to ultimate relapse, economic depression, and vulnerability. Sir, ably representing the Mahaica-Borbis region, I bring the message of the people to this House. They said this budget takes us from prosperity to poverty, from a good life to a fight to survive, from equity and transparency to disparity, from fear of dying of COVID-19 to that of the pressures of the PPP. Mr. Speaker, this budget seeks to hastily dismantle a high standard of living set by the APNU-AFC coalition government over the last 5 years. That is called the good life for all. Sir, one would understand the high standards and that the Honorable Minister could not have seen it from where he was over the last 5 years, of which he failed to advise his colleagues on the other side of the House on the state of affairs of his budget. It is quite sad for a nation to have been enjoying a good life, and then suddenly, Mr. Speaker, an uncaring group of people comes and change the course of life for the worst. Sir, this budget will not only add frustration and depression to our nation's people, but it seeks to only enrich a few whilst causing severe hardship on the honest working public servants who strive to maintain a livelihood. Mr. Speaker, this budget in its entirety stands to be the largest of its kind. Even so, Guyanese would have wanted to see some basic measures such as a committed and agreed wage and allowance increase, of which this government failed to deliver in 2 successive budgets. Mr. Speaker, I recommend that public servants be given a 10% wage increase across the board from the year 2020. Reduction in the rate of VAT and a planned stimulus for the citizens in order to combat the hardships of COVID-19, among others. Mr. Speaker, the budgetary allocations for the Mahaica-Borbis region lacks vision and progress. It tramples upon fairness and the even distribution of resources. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn my attention to public health. Mr. Speaker, the Mahaica-Borbis region's health sector is heading in a downhill trajectory. Sir, with all the healthcare facilities clamoring for help, since none has the basic essential drugs needed for the day-to-day service to the people. The people are grappling for consciousness with 2 major drug shortages in a mere 6 months. The X-ray machines are all down at the 2 major health institutions within that region. Sir, it was the APNU-AFC government that ensured both hospitals had functioning machines to meet the needs of the citizenry. All it called for was simple maintenance. Sir, when I look at the budgetary allocation for this sector, I see no provision outlined to bring remedy to these deficiencies. Are we to now say to the people that it is compulsory for them to spend their hard-earned taxpayers' monies to private medical service? Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC constructed an emergency outpatient unit at the Fort Wellington Hospital and implemented 24 hours of service at that unit with 4 functioning ambulances in the region. To date, Mr. Speaker, the region only has 2 functioning ambulances. This echoes the sentiments of my COIN team, a path to ultimate relapse, economic depression, and vulnerability. Mr. Speaker, the regional administration failed to accomplish its targeted efforts in the 2020 budget in healthcare. They budgeted to purchase 2 new ambulances, Mr. Speaker, but to date, none has materialized in services to the people of Region Number 5. Surprisingly, in this budget, the sum of over $18 million is budgeted yet again to facilitate purchase of another ambulance. This is the level of failure the people receive from an uncaring group whose mission statement is great incompetence. Further, Mr. Speaker, 2 new incinerators were budgeted for in the 2020 estimate for Fort Wellington and Myconi hospitals to the tune of over $26 million. Again, sir, no work have been done on the sites proposed to house these units. Shockingly, sir, 2021 estimates now caters for an additional 4 incinerators to be constructed at health facilities across the region. Well, sir, as the messenger of the people, I will deliver the message again. We say the Mahaika-Borbis region lacks administrative and political leadership. And the question is, where is the taxpayers' dollars? Where is the accountability for the taxpayers' dollars? Mr. Speaker, permit me to touch on agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister in his budget presentation, speaking on agriculture, forestry and fishery on page 8 and paragraph 3.3, said the agriculture, forestry and fishing sector has grown by some 4.1%, with improvements stemming largely on account of growth in rice and other crops, livestock and the livestock industry. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, what he failed to mention is that the foundation of the real work and real development was laid by the APNU-AFC coalition government, which now bear fruit to the Guyanese people. Sir, he stopped shy of giving the praise where it is due. Mr. Speaker, the good book tells us, render to Caesar what is due to Caesar. As of such, sir, I want to state that the budgetary plan for agriculture, there are no new plans, but the plans of the coalition being completed. And that speaks of the good governance the Guyanese people receive under the coalition government. Testimony to my statement, Mr. Speaker, are the following. Improved drainage and irrigation systems across the length and breadth of the rice belt. The coalition did that. Since 2015, the NDIA has installed pumps across Region 2, 3, 4, and 5. A number of pump stations have been built and rehabilitated across the coastline at a cost of over $2,921,000,000, Mr. Speaker. The areas benefiting from this investment include Lusignan, BV Triumph, Good Hope and its environs, Friendship, Vigilance, Buxton, Horstellian, Mocha, Providence, Hope, and then more in Region 4. Three Friends, Columbia, Aberdeen, Land of Plenty, Mainstay, Lima, and Reliance in Region 2. Trafalgar in Region 5. Windsor Forest in Region 3. Bengal, Gangaram, Eversham, and Joppa in Region 6. Honorable Mr. Zulfikar. A new sluice built at the Edward Village, West Coast Bobbies. The coalition did that. Introduction of new high-yielding paddy for farming market. The coalition did it. Introduction of a new variety of fruit such as citrus. The coalition did that. Introduction, the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority commissioned the country's first amphibious excavator on May 24, 2019. It was the coalition that did that. The Guyana Livestock Development Authority commissioned Guyana's first ever duck egg hatchery. The hatchery produces approximately 8,500 ducklings on a hatching day. Again, the coalition did that. The year 2017 saw the introduction of the black giant birds to the Guyana market through the Hinterland Development Program, with the handing over of 100 black giant chickens along with the requisite startup feed and supplies to Madia Secondary School in Region Number 8. To date, approximately 70 hinterland communities were able to access these birds, and a total of 76,000 birds were distributed. Again, the coalition did that. Mr. Speaker, $100 million was spent to upgrade access road in Onvoak, allowing for direct access to MMA, ADA seed cleaning facility, amongst other benefits, such as transportation of produces and livestock. Again, Mr. Speaker, the coalition did that. We had decentralized services of NDIA with a new regional office constructed at Onvoak, Region 5 for the first time. Must I say the coalition did that? Mr. Speaker, the minister on page 31 in paragraph 4.54 of his budget speech boasted of the construction of a modern abattoir at Onvoak for beef and beef products, which will transform the cattle industry. Sir, permit me to let the nation know that it was the APNU plus AFC government who designed and started the construction of that abattoir in 2019, which is located north along the Onvoak Farm Road, Region 5, West Coast, Bobbies. Again, I say, Mr. Speaker, this sector has no new plan. The coalition did it all. Allow me to speak now, Mr. Speaker, about the model farm in Region 5 that we once had. Mr. Speaker, the Mahaika Barbies region boasted of a model farm, once located at Fort Wellington to Narstigide, which provided permanent employment for over 30 persons, benefiting their families by providing fresh vegetables for the region, the hospitals, the Hugo Chavez Center, and as far as region number 10. It is sad to mention, sir, this project was discontinued by this irresponsible administration, and the lands lay at waste today, sir. Some of the staffers were sent home, and the others who were promised a few jobs, Mr. Speaker, and the lands were promised also to a few party devotees. Mr. Speaker, is this the path for recovery, economic dynamism, and resilience? Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to look at the education sector. The education sector of the Mahaika Barbies region was deprived of the much-needed capital investment by this administration. The meager sum of just about 136 million to service some 72 schools within Baijival to Ithaca and an administrative office, almost $10 million less of the allocated sum by the coalition government in 2019. Sir, when one thinks of education, they think of the nation's wealth. Hence, failure to effectively plan for such a critical sector threatens the future and wealth of any nation. It is against this backdrop, sir, that I make mention that the government has failed the people of region number 5 by depriving them of improved quality of education and improved conditions of education delivery. Sir, the truth is, for a number of years, the teachers and children of the number 8 nursery school has been cramped at a section of the lower flat of the number 8 primary school. It was the coalition government that did the feasibility study, sought access to lands, made budgetary proposals for the construction of a state-of-the-art nursery school. But when this administration took office, it was denied. How then can the Honorable Minister with responsibility for finance come to this house and try to sing his out-of-tune line and rhythm jingle about a path to recovery, economic dynamism, and resilience, when in fact they can look at the nation's children in their eyes and public servants and say, we just don't care? Just to remind or enlighten the Honorable Minister of the coalition's progress in the education sector in Region 5, so he can land from out of space to a path to recovery. The Port Nursery School, the coalition built it. The Calcutta Nursery School, the coalition built it. Construction of the IT and Science Laboratory at Woodley Park and Belgium Secondary, the coalition built them. The rehabilitation and renovation of a number of schools throughout Region 5, including Budgetary Secondary, Morrow Point Primary, Carmont Nursery, Rossignol Secondary, Belgium Secondary, among others, too numerous to mention, sir. The coalition did that. The introduction of the 5Bs initiatives such
Honorable
as
member, before you can do more of that, you need an extension.
Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Mr. Jones, Honorable Member, you can continue to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Books, breakfast, that is the 5Bs initiative. We did all of that. How now the Honorable Minister come to tell this nation about a path to recovery? It very well seems like his government is lost in discovery. Mr. Speaker, as I speak here, a number of children are being tested for COVID-19 at the Belgium Secondary School since the discovery of a positive COVID-19 case present in the present attendance. What is the financial plan within this budget to safeguard our children and teachers as they attend school? Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to look at human and social services. In the area of human and social services, Mr. Speaker, the government makes shouts of pro-poor and the likes when the people in dire need of government services such as public assistance are deprived daily by the now installed Board of Guardians. Single mothers are refused. Sick and differently able books are cancelled. Mr. Speaker, over 100 eligible persons were knocked off of the public assistance list in Region 5. This is after the installed government took office. And Mr. Speaker, this is the evidence of what is happening in Region 5. Sir, our senior citizens still decry the meager increase of just a mere $4,500 on old age pension, taking it to $25,000, which is some $15,000 shy of the failed PPP manifesto promise. Mr. Speaker, permit me to look at public security. The APNU-AFC, through wise consideration, regionalized the Guyana Police Force and started construction of regional headquarters across this country. Sir, the region will soon have its own regional headquarters completed and will house the regional and deputy regional commander along with their support staff from HR, finance, traffic, and CID departments, among others. Sir, again, I willingly invite not only the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, but all those on the other side of the House to come and cut the ribbons of the grand opening ceremony to share in real development, real progress, real administration, and real vision of the APNU-AFC coalition. Again, I say, sir, this government has no new plans. Sports, culture, youth, and youth development, Mr. Speaker. The youths of Region Number 5 are shocked and disturbed at the delivery of this 2021 handbook dubbed a budget. With great disappointment, they are left to bear the full brunt of hardship and dark, gloomy days since the Honorable Minister's budget seeks to take our region into great relapse and undoubtedly a recession from the high hallmarks of the quality of life set by the APNU-AFC government. Mr. Speaker, in the Guyana Chronicle dated 17 December 2019, a letter titled "The APNU plus AFC government has delivered in the area of education," and I quote, 73% of CSEC passes in 2019 was not as a result of a magic wand, but it was the careful implementation of President Granger's 5Bs initiative. His Excellency and his administration have made education a top priority and have spent between $8 to $20 billion more in the education system than the PPP. The APNU-AFC government spent $40.3 billion in 2016. $43.1 billion in 2017, $45.1 billion in 2018, and $52.2 billion in 2019. That is the notes our young people of this nation needs to take, along with the Honorable Minister Susan Rodriguez, that speaks to the preparation and development of young people. Sir, the coalition delivered in training, poetry and sciences, robotics, engineering, sports, and job creation.
Honorable
That's the good
member,
life
you
we
will have to
delivered.
wind down.
In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the purpose of a budget is to improve the quality of life of the people, not just a few in selected communities. It is the right of every Guyanese to have the best out of a budget and to be the beneficiaries from every area of service. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Finance wasted 5 precious hours of the nation's time when he read from this 77-page handbook. Sir, he could have simply said to the people that his government has no real plan for the improvement of the lives of the ordinary Guyanese and no new ideas on how to bring about real economic boom. As of such, sir, as an elected representative of the people, I cannot support this budget. Not now, not ever. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to sound the warning once again to this stiff-necked government bent on depriving the average of a good life. Proverbs 29, 1 and 2 says, "He that being often reproved and hardened his neck, the Honorable Bishop, shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn." I submit to you, this budget is plagued with disparity and riddled with inaccuracies and will not offer any good to this nation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Prime Minister, you may move the extension beyond 8 o'clock.
With your permission, move to Standing Order 11 as we do the extension. Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you very much. And the question is that the standing order be suspended so that we can go beyond 8 o'clock. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. I now call on the Honorable Member, Mr. C. Paul Narang. Please proceed, Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker, as I rise to make my contribution to this 2021 budget debate, I begin by commending the Honorable Senior Minister within the Office of the President, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, and his team for a budget that sought to bring relief to the ordinary people. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, when we look at the menu of measures proposed by Budget 2021, I could not help but wonder if the Minister of Finance had taken on the role of Santa Claus, giving out presents here, there, and everywhere. He did not miss one sector and sought to ensure that the budget reached everyone. This, Mr. Speaker, is commendable, but not surprising. The PPPC administration now, like those in the past, has always sought for the fruits of development to reach all Guyanese. Indeed, it is the PPPC that is delivering the vaunted good life to all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2021 builds on the progress commenced in Budget 2020. It seeks to further dismantle the hardship and burdens that the coalition placed on the backs of the working people during its short but destructive term in office. Indeed, Budget 2021 was highly anticipated and clearly delivered. It is a far cry from what we experienced during the APNU AFC. Mr. Speaker, the fact that the PPPC can enhance reliefs to the ordinary people without increasing or adding any tax or fees signals that the country is in the hands of the right people. It must be recalled that some 200 taxes and fees were shoved down our throats by the former leaders of the APNU AFC government, who sought to insult our intelligence by barefacedly telling us they had the nation's interests at heart. Undoubtedly, Mr. Speaker, those cunning statements have unveiled themselves as downright deception. Just in recent weeks, we have seen several scandals emerging, thus demonstrating where those leaders' interests really are. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the other side of this honorable House, except the Honorable Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chairman, are trying desperately to employ every means necessary, even transcending the figments of their imagination, to find talking points to denounce this budget. Just imagine, their only reaction was to say that public servants would get no increase. And when their folly was exposed, it appeared the cat got their tongues. They have now changed tunes and are speaking no more of collective bargaining, but what an announcement. Similar to when they were in the driver's seat. Imposition after imposition was the order of the day. Mr. Speaker, the honorable members on the other side of the House, and I said except the Honorable Deputy Speaker, while saying they speak for the working people, are really far away from their travails. Let me say to them, Mr. Speaker, public servants are not the only group of workers in this country. Let us not forget that it was that same APNU AFC grouping that diluted the Ministry of Labor into a mere department, refusing to acknowledge calls for its resuscitation. Today, the Ministry of Labor is not only resuscitated, but is being actively revamped. Honorable Minister Hamilton spoke to the many efforts of the government to advance the protection of the working class. I must remind Mr. Speaker that the coalition during its term did not advance a single piece of legislation to enhance workers' protection. I recognize too the efforts of the Ministry of Labor to advance its training agenda and matching skills with vacancies. So, Mr. Speaker, the PPP is walking the talk and not engaged in idle talk as we see emanating from the APNU AFC on the other side of this House. Mr. Speaker, the 2021 budget was presented under the theme, A Path to Recovery, Economic Dynamism and Resilience. As I considered the theme, my mind was immediately jolted to the agriculture sector. This industry plays a seminal role, yet the coalition downplayed, diminished, and degenerated the sector. During the coalition's term in office, the country had an office, Georgetown-based agriculture minister. I repeat that, the country had an office, Georgetown-based agriculture minister. He could not be found in the fields, grounding with farmers and workers. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, that the then Minister of Agriculture told the media he was not aware that the then government had borrowed $30 billion for Gaisuku when he was asked. Really, Mr. Speaker, could we have had any hope that the sector would have developed under such leadership? Mr. Speaker, it is interesting for us to note that this government is saddled with that debt contracted by APNU AFC. Today, Mr. Speaker, the sector is on the path to recovery, dynamism, and resilience. Our new Minister of Agriculture, I recognize, is working dedicatedly to reverse the damage inflicted. I have known of the minister's unflinching stance to alleviate the plight of the farmers and agriculture workers. I know too of his connection to the ordinary people, and that is why I'm not surprised when I opened the newspaper to see him interacting with farmers, sugar workers, fishermen, and others on a regular basis. It is that sort of practical hands-on leadership that is required to put agriculture back to its rightful place. Mr. Speaker, the coalition's disdain for agriculture was probably most visibly manifested in the sugar industry. APNU AFC took an industry which was showing great signs of recovery to its lowest ebb. It was as if they had a reverse Midas touch. A reverse Midas touch, Mr. Speaker. When the APNU AFC entered office in 2015, former Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu is quoted in a statement of November 28, 2015, as saying, quote, Gaisuku will recover this year, will mark a turning point in the performance of the industry. End of quote. By May 2020, former Gaisuku chairman John Doe was seeking the intervention of the then President Granger, quote, to use your good office to arrange for funding to prevent the impending closure of the industry, end of quote. That is the reverse Midas touch at work, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I saw a few nights ago Honorable Member Kemraj Ramjatan on the news contending that the government's support to sugar was akin to pouring good money into a bad industry. I'm informed, Mr. Speaker, that the Honorable Member may know a lot about pouring. He's not here and he's probably gone pouring. But I urge him to remove his blinkers. The Honorable Member chooses, it seems, to ignore what sugar means to our nation or what it contributes economically and socially to our people. It was the same Honorable Member, Mr. Speaker, who during the 2015 elections campaign promised sugar workers their lives would be assured with a 20% increase, among other things. But, Mr. Speaker, he turned around and betrayed them. Today, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member called the sugar workers bloodsucker. I wish he was here so that I could have looked at him in the eyes, Mr. Speaker, and say to the member that he is nothing but shameless, to put it mildly. He must know, however, that this nation is listening. Those thousands of Guyanese who suffered will undoubtedly forever remember the coalition crime against them. But what's worse, Mr. Speaker, is that it seems the Honorable Member and his colleagues disdainfully are seeking to perpetuate policies that impoverish and pauperize our people, and yet they want to call themselves leaders. In passing, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, said ginger production was 29,000 tons. Well, at $200 per pound, Region 1 would have earned 12.76 billion. That did not happen. And clearly the Honorable Member, we could conclude, is not thinking straight. Some people may say some other things about straight. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that a great deal of the support is directing toward repairing what I consider the deliberate damage inflicted to the sugar industry. I'm convinced, Mr. Speaker, that the coalition had one clear intention. That was to remove sugar from the map of Guyana. But in as much as I'm convinced about that, Mr. Speaker, I remain at a loss as to what motivated them to pursue such a policy of spitefulness. Is it that they despise sugar workers? Is it that the workers harmed or hurt them? What did the sugar industry do for the APNU AFC to heap such scorn onto them? Is it because they are now sitting in the different seats in this House? Mr. Speaker, history will record the harsh treatment the coalition meted out to the sugar industry. It was completely reprehensible, and war where it appeared that the industry was executed at the altar of political expediency. Mr. Speaker, while we must lament the past, wisely it is said, we should not live in it. It is therefore heartening that the sugar industry is on the path of recovery and ultimate resilience. Significant efforts are being made at this time to breathe new life into the industry. At this time, the new board and management are actively focused on bringing the industry back into its rightful path. This is a task that is worth the reward and one that future generations will forever cherish. The budget informed that an estate-by-estate plan was being developed to bring estates back to profitability. Already several practical and workable measures are being pursued to improve the state of affairs. Increased packaged sugar, which attracts superior prices, is being maximized, and other areas for improvement are being considered. Apart from that, diversification opportunities are being examined in the areas of agro-energy and other product diversification. Mr. Speaker, in a nutshell, is what sets apart PPPC from my colleagues on the other side. It seems rather than seeing the glass half empty rather than half full. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, it was that sort of thinking that pushed the industry down into the doldrums. But, Mr. Speaker, sugar was just one of the main victims of the coalition's disdain for agriculture. Our farmers were asked to swallow hefty hikes in cost of land rental and drainage and irrigation fees. They suffered with the removal of tax concessions for equipment and confronted other anti-farmer policies. Again, I am at a loss, Mr. Speaker, to rationally explain the logic to punish those who feed us and keep us strong. Many farmers were barely able to keep their noses above water and faced painful times during the APNU AFC term. That is why I'm heartened, Mr. Speaker, to recognize and applaud the reversal of those policies. Today, our farmers can once again breathe ease as the shackles which held them back have been removed. Today, our brothers and sisters in the agriculture sector are excited, anxious, and motivated to put their best foot forward. Indeed, we have significant agricultural potential, and the industry can play an important role in ensuring economic diversity as we seek to build a resilient economy that is not dependent on a few sectors. This is testament to the forward-thinking approach of the PPPC, which does not consider just today, but tomorrow and the days after as well. Mr. Speaker, as a trade unionist interacting regularly with the ordinary man and woman, I cannot fail to use this opportunity to speak to the pro-poor and pro-people measures outlined in the budget. Undoubtedly, the people have much to celebrate. The school children grant has not only been restored, but improved as well. This will go a far way in assisting many Guyanese to be able to acquire items for their children's schooling. This, Mr. Speaker, is now being deemed inadequate by the APNU AFC, whose legacy was one of removal or takeaway.
Honorable member, you will need an extension to talk more about legacy.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask for my colleague to have 5 minutes more to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is much jubilation with the decrease in water rates coming after VAT was removed a few months ago. Similarly, the expansion of the zero-rated list of goods will see the cost of living further reduced, while our pensioners and public assistance recipients are to receive a well-deserved hike. Taken together, the disposable income of our people has gone up by several $1,000s. This is a significant win for all Guyanese. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, there is a great lot for our people to be excited about. Undoubtedly, there have been several gains, and I'm certain there is more in the pipeline. Indeed, with a fast expanding economy, the expectation of our people are heightening. The government has committed itself to bringing relief and betterment to all Guyanese. Aptly put, Mr. Speaker, His Excellency President Irfan Ali, when he addressed the House a few days ago, said, quote, "There is a bright future ahead," end of quote. I'm convinced this government will build a future that is secure, strong, and sustainable. Budget 2021 is another step in that direction where Guyanese will be proud, happy, and contented. This is a future we must all aspire for, and one which we all deserve and must work collectively to realize as we advance the lot of all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, I commend Budget 2021. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, before I call the final speaker, just a few announcements. From tomorrow, after having discussions between the chief whips and the clerk, we will establish two podiums on either side. Persons are also talking about the difficulty of speaking with the mask, and those who would like to make a presentation from the podium without the mask can so do. Otherwise, all other presentations from your seats. And as we are about to close, I will close with a happy note that the honorable member, Mr. Lee Williams, is celebrating his birthnight tonight, so you know where the party is. Congratulations, honorable member. Honorable member, Dr. Jennifer Westford, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I, like my colleagues before me, rise to my contribution on Budget 2021. My first task, sir, would be to congratulate the Honorable Finance Minister, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, for his eloquent presentation of this budget. Congratulations are also extended to the staff of the Ministry of Finance, as well as the other line agencies, for their hours of hard work, meticulous research, and analytic depth. Mr. Speaker, I also express my gratitude to those individuals from other political parties, the private sector, the labor movement, and civil society, whose contributions have also informed this budget. Sir, over the past 32 hours of this debate, we were overwhelmed with episodes of orchestrated racist and inflammatory untruths and half-truths from the opposition benches. Mr. Speaker, two recurring mantras of the members on the opposite side were the budget has nothing for black people and that there is nothing for public servants. Mr. Speaker, both of these venomous assertions are misleading and, to say the least, mischievous. The opposition must be reminded, Mr. Speaker, that they are entitled to their own opinion, but not to their own twisted set of facts. Firstly, without a doubt, Mr. Speaker, all Guyanese, irrespective of ethnicity, religious persuasion, or political affiliation, shall benefit equally from the measures outlined in this budget. The operative words here, Mr. Speaker, are all Guyanese. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, every member who spoke so far has repeated the misinformed untruth of no monies being allocated for salary increases for public service. Mr. Speaker, these pathological untruth propagators on the opposite side continue to spew their divisive propaganda, even though explanations were provided on several occasions as to where the monies for salary increases are located in the budget. Once again, sir, let me reiterate that the funds allocated for salary increases are located within line item 6141 in this budget 2021. But this administration will be engaging the GPSU and other relevant trade unions before announcing a percentage increase. Mr. Speaker, these opposition members are barefaced and cunning to say the least. These said members who continue to rant and rave about wanting to see the mention of a percentage salary increase in the budget never themselves ever mentioned any percentage increase for public servants in their budgets from 2016 to 2019. For ease of reference, sir, I would like to point members to the consideration of estimates for the 2019 budget of the Ministry of Finance, where a question was asked by the then opposition member of parliament, Mr. Irfan Ali. And I quote the response that was given by the then Minister of Finance. I could tell you that until we finish discussions with the GTU and GPSU in respect to 2019, it would be presumptuous of me to give numbers or percentages. We have set aside a total there, and hopefully it will be enough for any increases that we agree to with the union. Mr. Speaker, this exact statement is mentioned twice in that very Hansard at page 28 and page 29 when that question was asked again by the honorable member Irfan Ali. Mr. Speaker, the honorable Minister of Finance detailed a comprehensive budget and a plan to steer this country out of what seemed like a dark night of nepotism, wastage, and mismanagement, and put us in a direction which will kickstart our economy and stymie the resource leakage of the past government. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, we will focus on macroeconomy stability, investor confidence, productivity, international competitiveness, development of the country's manpower resources, improving governance and structures, social advancement, and significant improvement in the quality of life of all citizens. Mr. Speaker, this government shall strengthen governance and human resource management in the public service. This will require a sustained effort at developing a culture of efficiency and customer care in all of our government ministries, departments, and state agencies. We will accelerate the use of information and communication technology across the public service to improve decision-making and to deliver quality service to the citizens of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, The Ministry of Labor will intensify the National Skill Needs Assessment Program, which has already commenced. This study, sir, will identify the skill gaps within the local economy, thereby guiding education and training needs that are aligned with labor market information. The government, sir, will intensify its focus on improving the operational efficiency and financial sustainability of the Guyana Water Authority. Already, we have begun to see the results of these efficiency measures. The results, Mr. Speaker, are beginning to happen. The anxiety on the other side would probably rise, but we have committed ourselves to resolving people's water problems, and resolved they shall be. Mr. Speaker, allocations are also made for our agricultural incentive program, aimed at assisting local farmers in overcoming the major challenges faced in that sector. This program will provide support to farmers in the form of subsidized fertilizers, land preparation, pest management, post-harvest marketing, and enhanced livestock extension services. There are also incentives to encourage youth entrepreneurship in agriculture and fisheries, the provision of security in the agricultural sector, and for agro-processing. Not to forget, Mr. Speaker, that this PPPC administration has removed the duty from all agricultural machinery. Mr. Speaker, we will also upgrade the youth entrepreneurship and apprenticeship centers to increase the intake of students as well as to further engender the shift to one of self-reliance and empowerment. It is envisaged that every region will have a training center. Mr. Speaker, the task ahead is great indeed, and heavy is the responsibility. Yet, it is a noble and glorious challenge, a challenge which calls for courage, resilience, and commitment of all. Surely, without a doubt, Mr. Speaker, this budget that sows the seed for renewal, growth, and radical transformation of our communities, and by extension, our country as a whole. It is the duty of all of us to nurture the seeds and ensure that it blossoms into bountiful harvest. This is a budget, Mr. Speaker, that surely reopens the door to a brighter, prosperous future for all Guyanese to finally enjoy that promised good life that evaded them for the last 5 years. Mr. Speaker, the fact is that the present environment calls for proactive management, visionary leadership, and the ability to create partnerships with stakeholders throughout the economy. It also requires, especially, that the poor and vulnerable are not unduly impacted, not only because this is morally justified, but also because it ensures a social stability and continuing commercial activity which keeps business activity going. Mr. Speaker, it is obvious that the opposition has missed the mark. The opposition is out of touch with the realities and aspirations of the very everyday, ordinary Guyanese. Sir, all of a sudden, the members on the opposite side are professing concern about the measures in the budget which are designed to provide a better life for all. They want to know why. They want to know by what mechanism the poor and needy, as they have described our people, will benefit from the measures. By the Ministry of Finance implementing further taxation. Mr. Speaker, believe it or not, but this same APNU AFC cabal from the former administration is unashamedly trying to tell us how to conduct our safety net policy. It will serve them well for their future political careers if they would look, listen, and learn from the PPPC when it comes to building the economy and providing for our people. I want to assure you that we can and we will implement the policies and programs to create wealth for our people and for this great nation. Mr. Speaker, I need not remind this House that the PPPC government emerged out of the citizens' desire to be governed by a political party which reflects the diversity of our nation and which stand willing and ready to pilot the journey to a new horizon of growth and development. This is the basis of the national consensus, which endorsed our philosophy of a people-centered development and our vision of building a secure, prosperous, and sustainable nation. Mr. Speaker, constructive engagement is also about 21st century international benchmark, where practices of political civility and comity are paramount. Objective disagreement and cordial discussion should be the preferred relationship between government and opposition, rather than engaging in public posturing and brinkmanship. But it is clear, Mr. Speaker, that this opposition's doctrine is that once you are in the opposition, your duty is to oppose anything introduced into this House by the government. And just a few minutes ago, sir, the honorable member, Mr. Duncan, said that we will not support this budget and we will never ever support any budget brought to this House by the government. Mr. Speaker, this currency of hate and divisiveness has no place in our society. We ought to know better than that. Respect in our society is becoming an increasingly scarce commodity. There seems to be a general breakdown in basic good manners and respect across many spheres, even in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, it is my hope that all of us in this honorable House will recommit ourselves to ensuring that we rise above the political fray and keep our gaze firmly focused in this central objective of uplifting and advancing the development of our country and our people. Mr. Speaker, we in the government have not claimed that everything is going right. We would not claim that everything is going right. Challenges remain, but there is no one in this House who could have predicted the positive outcomes we are experiencing given the negative results we faced even 6 months ago. Mr. Speaker, no one could have predicted a recovery in the level of confidence in our economy by our international partners. But this has not come about by chance. This has come about because of focused, dedicated hard work. There are real prospects for expanding economic activity and employment. Reason enough to continue on the path we have outlined. This is not the time for wild speculative policy shift based on inadequate or out-of-date information.
And this is the time for you to get an extension, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask for an extension of 5 minutes for my colleague to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member, Dr.
Thank you, Mr.
Westward, you
Speaker.
may continue to conclude.
Thank you. This is a time to address issues of problems using analysis rather than appeal to magical solutions. The public response, both domestic and external, has been rewarding. The message is clear. There is increased confidence in the economy and in our ability to meet the challenges which we face. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is a country of ambitious people, all trying to get ahead. We all want better for our own lives and for our families, and we all want to get ahead, and rightly so. This government has prepared a historic budget that is focused on empowering every Guyanese, providing them with greater economic freedom, opportunity, and independence, while protecting the most vulnerable in our society, especially our young people. We are moving in the right direction, Mr. Speaker. and we fully intend to continue to improve on these achievements as we seek to build a society that promotes both growth and equity. Mr. Speaker, the people of Guyana were presented with two options going into the elections of March 2nd. One option was to keep things as they were, unrelenting hardship, unending belt tightening, lack of accountability in government, arrogance in government, negligible economic growth, joblessness, and increased crime. The other option, sir, was to enter into a partnership of prosperity with the PPPC and traverse the road to prosperity and a better life. Mr. Speaker, the people chose the PPPC and the prosperity. Mr. Speaker, the path to prosperity is not an easy one, but we must face the task in a sure-footed and purposeful way. There will be the inevitable obstacles, but this government has a plan to achieve that prosperity as a people. And we know that plan must be inclusive, providing educational opportunities, proper health care, support for our entrepreneurs, provide decent housing for our people, and improvement of our environment. In return, our plan calls for us to be more productive in everything we do. We must be prepared to confront each obstacle with diligence and courage. We must continue to take bold and essential decisions that will rescue our future by building prosperity first in our minds and then in our pockets. This is the essence of our partnership for prosperity. Mr. Speaker, as I close, there is a famous prayer that I feel moved to leave with everyone in this beloved country. In this prayer, there is a threefold request to God for serenity, courage, and wisdom. Serenity is a prayer for peace to accept what cannot be altered in oneself. Courage is a request for fortitude to overcome obstacles to achieve what is possible. And wisdom is a prayer for discernment to know when to accept a situation and when to be bold and to challenge it. And so today, let us pray to God that He will give us the strength of our conviction to provide good governance to our people and to be bold and courageous as we make decisions that are essential to our success. The prayer, Mr. Speaker, goes as follows. Grant me the God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I again call upon the public sector workers, Mr. Speaker, not to be influenced by political rhetoric. The development of our human resources is the most vital element in the development of our nation. We have demonstrated the necessary leadership to make this vision a reality. Together, let us press on to prosperity as we partner together in shared sacrifice and collective vision. Together, let us work on building the foundation of our economy. We have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to make a lasting difference, to be felt over time by ourselves and our children for generations to come. It is time to unite and press on to prosperity with the firm determination and hard work that will make us great as Guyanese. If we hope together, sir, endure together, and work hard together, we will achieve together. Mr. Speaker, I therefore would like to register my endorsement and support for this 2020 budget.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, just before I call for the Prime Minister to move the adjournment, least I may have not mentioned it. The persons who choose to come to the podium to speak can do so with their masks off. Just a reminder tomorrow. Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of the Assembly to 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 25th of February, 2021.
Honorable members, the Assembly now stands adjourned to 10 a.m. Thursday, February 25th.
here, and they live and die here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one grass, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, the time of night. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right, so we